Hello, everybody, and welcome to our bi-monthly Akin meeting. We're so glad everybody was able to come in. We still have a few people trickling in. And we have Mark Abramovich, and I think I'm saying it correctly. He's going to be taking over this presentation. He has his own MIRS group, and he's also a fellow Fortune Builder students. And I know a bunch of you have seen him at different training because I run into him all the time, and he's always very pleasant. So we appreciate that. And so he was gracious enough to give us a presentation this week. And the funny thing is there's also a few other lenders that are jumped in. So we're going to ask everybody to be kind to each other. But and Mark has also a version of this presentation on his website. I'll make sure to resend it when I send the recording. And Mark has been funding for about 3 years, and he has different programs that he wanted to show us. So Mark, please go on and take over, and the floor is yours. And we'll reserve all the questions to the end. And we also have 4 questions we always ask all the lenders, and he already has the questions, and we'll discuss those before we end the meeting.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure, and it's good to see you all. And the different programs that I have are fix and flip and long-term hold for 1 to 4 unit properties. Now, the specific rates that can be found on websites, there's plenty of lenders, you can find their rates. What I wanted to discuss tonight was about how to finance a project, especially in today's environment where LTVs have been decreased. I think it's important for everybody to have an idea of where their capital is coming from and how to best fund their project, right? What is required and what the different parts of the financing are and how to do it. So for that, I have a presentation, and let's go through it. So the full project finances of a project are essentially all of the costs and the project income. That's the entire, basically, that's the entire fix and flip project, right? Money going into it as the costs, and then the project income that comes out. So what you have is all of the expenses, and then you have the earn, whatever that is. So what is a part of the full project costs? Well, the full project costs are the purchase and renovation of the property itself, and then you have the fees and the costs that are part of this part of the transaction, something called soft costs. So if we break this down further, it's the purchase and renovation, and then there are the purchase fees, right? The different costs associated with the purchase, such as the attorney fees, appraisals, title work, the holding costs, which is the interest payments, as well as the electricity, gas, utility, basically the utility fees that you're paying while you're holding the property and doing the project. And then there are the sale costs. Now, the sale cost is a little unique because the sale cost is something that comes out of the project. When you sell, it's coming out of the income coming in. It's not a cost that you have to bring to the project. So this is all on the project side. Then you have the capital side, right? How are you paying for these costs, right? For the project costs. There are different ways, such as paying for it with cash, using the loan, having equity, an equity investor, and a mix of these options. So if we look at cash, that's the simplest way. You just simply take the cash literally out of your bank account, from under your mattress, out of the safety deposit box, and you buy the property, you pay for it, you pay for all of the costs with it. When you sell the property, the sale costs, right, that's the real estate agent fees, let's say, come out of the income, you know, the income coming in, right, from the sale proceeds, and then you're left with the profit from the sale. So this is the cash setup. The next way to do this is to do a loan. Whether it's a hard money loan, a private money loan, it doesn't matter. It's a loan. So when you're doing a loan, typically, the lender will require that you have some skin of your own in the game, that there will be some investment from the investor. So the loan will cover some portion of the purchase and the renovations. And typically, lenders prefer to provide 100% of the renovation cost because a half-finished project helps no one. And then, again, you're using cash, let's say as investor funds, you're using the cash for some down payment on the purchase, for the purchase costs, the holding costs, and then again, sale costs are coming out of the proceeds. And this is the setup of how to finance a project with a loan. So as you can see, this loan can be from an HMO, from a hard money source, a private source, it doesn't matter, it's a loan. The typical percentages you're getting when we're talking about these loans is the purchase is 60 to 90%, 100% of renovations, and what you have to bring is the 10 to 40% of the purchase plus the soft costs. Another option is if you obtain a second loan, and we're going to discuss that later as well, if you obtain a second loan for the remaining portion of the purchase. So a hard money lender or a private lender are providing the first position bulk of the money. You have a private lender, family or friend, that provides this remaining piece of the purchase amount. And then you finally, again, use some of your own cash to cover the costs, the various costs. Now, what you can also do is, if you can negotiate it, is you can essentially have it where two loans from, let's say, a hard money source and a private source can cover the entire cost, meaning you actually can do the deal with zero investment out of your own pocket. You're the one with the project, you find it, you do it, and all of the money is split between two loans. Now, the last option I'll discuss is equity. So an equity investor is somebody who's not lending to you, but actually joins you as a partner in your project. So they join you in your LLC, and they actually invest cash together with you, or perhaps all of it, to finance the project. So they're not a lender, they're an investor together with you. And again, it depends on what you negotiate, how much of this this total amount that you need for the project, the investor will provide. But basically, it's either investor and partner, or it's just a partner. And you're actually doing the project, you're doing the work while the partner investor is providing the capital. Now, what you can also do is a mix of all of this. So hard money for the bulk of the money, right? For the bulk of the necessary funds, a second position loan or an unsecured loan for the gap in the purchase price, and then let's say an investing partner that provides purchase and holding costs and invest them with you in order to do the project. So this is a scenario that you can see here of a mix of loans, equity, and different positions. So this is how to finance a project. Basically, the three, I would say, main ways of financing a fix and flip project. Now, the question of how do you structure an equity partnership, for that I have these slides where to illustrate how the setup would work if you're partnering with someone. So in this case, it's written up with MIRS Group as a partner, but it doesn't matter. There's different benefits that you can obtain if you partner with people to finance when you're doing a project. So aside from people just being there for the money, what they can also be there is for experience. Now, depending on whom you're borrowing from, whether it's a private lender or hard money, they may adjust their rates based on experience, which is something we do. So the higher the experience, the lower the interest rate. So you can have the experience yourself, or you can partner with someone who has the experience in one LLC, and their experience counts in order to reduce the interest rate. So this is an illustration of a setup where there would be a project property. There's the LLC that's doing the project. Then there's the investor who's doing the project, right? They're the guarantor. They're the majority member. They're the guarantor. They're the one doing the project. They're the ones borrowing the money. And then there's another entity here, right? Whether another company or another investor that brings the experience. Now, if you need additional funds, right? So in this scenario, let's say you have all of the money you need and you just want more experience so that you can reduce the interest rate. This is this setup. On the other hand, if you still need additional capital, you're the investor doing the project. This is the investor with the experience, and you can have another investor with the capital who's joining the LLC just to provide the capital to it. These three entities are members of this LLC, and this LLC is the one that's actually borrowing the money and doing the project. And that's the setup of an equity partnership. So this is to illustrate how to finance a project and how you can set up a partnership to do so. I'll answer questions.
Hey, Mark, it's Avia. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Yourself?
Good, good. Quick question. So,
Of course.
you said typically you could have a private lender and a hard money lender work together to fund a deal. Do hard money lenders typically take second position?
No.
Okay.
What I mean is that you can have either or, and it also depends on who your private lender is. So if it's a private lender, somebody that's a professional who does lending, right? They're not really private at that point. But if your private lender is your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your cousin, then it becomes a question of, do they need a second position lien, or is a promissory note and a personal guarantee sufficient? They're still lending you the money. The question becomes, do they need a lien securing them to the property? Right? It's a question of, are you going to run away with their money or no?
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may say something as well, last time when we spoke to another lender who did a presentation, most hard money lenders, a lot of them, I shouldn't say most, don't necessarily like to have a second position behind them. So they know that people will do it. You know, we try to be upfront about it and transparent. It's a good conversation to have. And your private money, I know with Fortune Builder, they ask you to try to be the first, if you're private money, to be in first position. But to be honest, if somebody's giving you 300,000 as a hard money, they're not going to go in second position to somebody who's only giving you, like 20,000, 50,000 for your gap funding. So keep that in mind when you're talking to your private money lender and your hard money lender. Mark, do you want to put back that slide that showed the different?
Sure.
Yeah, up, and then we can ask people if they have any other questions on those.
Sure. You wanted this slide with the arrangement.
The first one, the other one that had the whole process.
This one. Sure.
Yes.
So this is the mix, right? This is your mix of all three essentially working together. Whether
Right.
it's hard money, right? Your gap, your private right here, and then in your investor cash or partner funds, whatever it is.
Right, and this is a very good slide because it really shows in detail everything that we've been, how we're all the both sides, both sides of the equation work.
Right. Shows I come out of the engineering world.
You engineers, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna keep it at that. Yeah. So does anybody have any question about this slide per se, or does everybody understand? Because I know in a group we have people from different levels. You have people that have done projects that before, that some that have not done projects yet, some that are still trying to get into the rehabbing. Any question on this slide right here?
Hi, this is Marshall. My question, not so much about the slides, but I guess to the lenders on the call.
Sure.
First and foremost, thank you everyone for being here and sharing your knowledge with us.
Of course.
Wanted to ask about, particularly, do you as a lender allow second position?
No.
Okay. What about the others? Do you guys allow it?
No, I don't. Tom Harwell, I don't.
Okay.
Hey,
Marshall, what's the scenario? Why are you looking for a second position? I'm going to ask you that.
So here's the scenario, right? So basically, as I'm looking to scale my business and do multiple transactions, right? I have access to private money lenders, right?
Okay.
PMLs. So therefore, I would like to do multiple. I don't want to put all my funds into one deal because then, it will take me a long time to scale my business. So that is the main reason why I ask. I also have my own money, right?
Okay.
That I use as well. It's just from a scalability perspective, I want to make sure that I can do multiple projects rather than one or two at a time. That's the reason why I ask.
So here's a suggestion for what you can do in order to utilize their money and have everything be secure and above board. What you can do is the slides that I showed with the partnership, and I can go back to them. So if you look at this slide right here, this additional funds investor, this middle entity right here, right? What you can do is you can actually create an LLC in which you and your PMLs, now I don't know who your PMLs are, right? It's one thing if it's your dentist or local deli owner versus your brother, sister, cousin, right? It's a little bit different. But let's just say it's your friends. Makes it a little bit easier. So you tell your friends, guys, I'm in the real estate industry and I have these opportunities. So why don't we all pool our money together into this LLC? We're going to be partners together in the LLC. Let's say 5 of us are going to put in $50,000 each. Okay? You have an LLC that has $250,000 right here. When you're doing a project and you come to a hard money lender who doesn't allow a second position, you don't need it, because this right here becomes a member of the project LLC, of the LLC that's doing the work. You understand?
I'm tracking, yes.
Okay, so now your company that has the money, that's the company that invests that second position, that gap that you're missing. Okay, so right here, the funds, let me go, hang on. So let's go to this slide, right? So right here, this you're getting from hard money, and this right here is what you're using that company with your friends, that investment company. This is what you're using its money for. Okay, so if on a project, the hard money is providing most of the money and you need 50 to 60,000, let's say it's 50,000. Now that 50,000 is coming from that LLC where you and your friends invested 250,000, which means if your projects are roughly in the same financial amount, right? The same amount, that's 5 projects you can do. Make sense?
Yeah, Dragon, that's definitely an option.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark, this is Manish. I think that's a great example.
Thank you.
I think you can potentially even create a seller financing in that company. You know, so if you basically are buying a property, and even if you don't go for private lending, you could, structure a deal where a seller financing can be, part of the purchase, which means, you can have the seller actually say, okay, 10%, 20%,
Right.
or whatever that payment is. And I think that's very applicable in bigger projects, like, when they're buying apartment buildings and all. This is, I think, a creative structuring, right? Is that
Yes.
something you have done?
So I haven't dealt much with seller financing. My borrowers just haven't had it. And there's limitations we place on how much the seller financing can be and how we calculate the purchase amount. So for example, if I'm providing 80% of purchase, it will be 80% of the amount after the seller financing. So let's say you're buying for 100,000, the seller's financing 10,000, right? 10%, or let's say 5%. So $5,000. We're going to provide 80% of the 95, not the full 100. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
We're not fans of dealing with it. I mean, there are different lenders have different guidelines and different ways they handle it.
But as long as that, if the company is already structured with seller's equity, and that's a separate entity altogether, which will bring in the investment, do you guys care? Meaning, because in the settlement, I'm just not thinking step by step, but if it is a totally separate LLC, which is going to bring funds, if it doesn't bring on purchase, it brings at some point and doesn't become too transparent to you as a lender. I'm just saying that loud, but I don't know whether you would care for that or not.
As long as they're not a lien and they're a partner in this deal, I think we can work it. It's something you and I can discuss privately.
Okay. Thanks.
When you have a specific deal, we can talk about it.
Sounds good.
So there is a question here. In the last scenario with 3 entities, who do you qualify for the loan? How is the qualification what is the qualification process?
So
Yes.
the majority is the guarantor. Okay, so right here, if you see, that's the 80% member who's the guarantor. So this would be the investor that's actually doing the project. And I'll tell you more. If I was, let's say, partnering with someone for experience, which I am actually, I'm doing it right now. I have, hopefully we'll close on Friday, and if not Friday, then Monday. But I'm in the process of doing it, where I'm partnering for experience, but I don't want to guarantee the loan. I'm not the one doing the work. I'm only there as experience. So I'm a 10% member. Now, what's interesting is that scenario, actually, that's exactly the setup. There's an additional member that's providing additional funds, okay? He also doesn't want to be a guarantor because he's only there for the capital. So the people who are actually doing the project, the investors who are guarantors, who are the ones who found the project, will be doing the project, right? They are the investors. They're the guarantors. So that's how you set it up. The majority is the guarantor, and everybody else is just minority partners there for the different reasons, whether it's credit, whether it's experience, right? Money. Now, what you have to keep in mind is your percentage membership in the LLC is not the same as your compensation. Your compensation is driven by the operating agreement. That's whatever you agree to. So just because I'm a 10% member of an LLC does not mean I'm being paid 10%. I could be paid less. I could be paid more.
Mark, it's Rupert McCabe. Good afternoon.
Rupert.
Good to see you again.
Same here.
I'm the one that asked that question because we're currently in a process with two other investors to do something very similar to this, so we can have more leverage for more acquisitions. And we are using our 2 years experience in the scenario of having done 2 flips. One of the other investors has the capital, and the other investor is almost like, it's like a private money.
Okay.
So in that scenario, would it work in this scenario where, for instance, you don't allow second lien position? How would this work? Let's say if you were the lender.
Well, that's exactly it. So the scenario that I'm describing, right? That's how we structured our deal, the one that I'm closing on Friday, where there's the project LLC. This is the company that gets the lien. This is the company that's the first position borrower from the hard money source. And members of this company are MIRS Group, which provides the experience, the private investor with the capital that brings the money, and the investor, which would, let's say, be you in this scenario, right? That's doing the project. And these 3 entities, right? These 3 companies or these 3 individuals are partners in this company, and this is the company that's the borrower. This is the company that's borrowing the money and is taking out the loan and doing the project.
So Rupert, if I can,
I got it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
So like sometimes, yeah, last time we were talking and we're saying like sometimes that's why on some properties you see like, 123 Main Street LLC, because they could have created the LLC just for that particular project, or and then once they sell the property, they just get rid of the LLC with the sale of the property.
Right.
So just make sure your LLC is just for that project or just for that property, so that, or unless you're doing repeat work, you're going to do other projects, then you can, set up an actual LLC. Like for us, we combine our 3 companies. We're Akin Developers because we're doing multiple projects. It's still Maisonette, Sapient, and Master General.
Right.
But if we do like a separate project with somebody else or something that's particular, we will call it just for that project. And then when we get rid of the house, we get rid of the LLC with it.
Are you sure? One more question for Mark.
Of course.
Mark, is this only for fix and flip? What happens if I'm buying and hold multifamilies and I really need to have a partnership for the cash flow leverage?
Lucky for you, I have that exact scenario in my own life as well. Yes, this would work for buy and hold as well. I have rental properties and they're multifamilies, and that's exactly what we had. I have a partner. On one of them, I have a partner that was just there for the money. Okay, so the 2 of us started a company, and we split the partnership, and we actually did it according to investment. Right? I wasn't doing it where it was different compensation. So the scenario is exactly the same. I have let me go back to this slide. So essentially, I have a partnership with another person where they're let's say, just for ease of use here, they're the 10% member, I'm the 90% member, and then we went and opened up an LLC to do the project. Okay, we opened up an LLC, and the bank lent the money to this LLC right here, and we're members together in it. And this is the company that actually has the mortgage from the bank. So yeah, it would work just fine. The only thing you have to do is you have to discuss with your partner that they're going to be in the project for a long time.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Of course.
Okay.
Anyone else?
See any other questions? Anybody else has any other questions about any of the slides?
Hey, Mark, it's Avi again. I had a quick question.
Sure.
I heard that you said there's a tier system based off what your experience, what the rates are. Do you have an example of what that tier system look like for you? Is it like 1 to 3 deals? It'd be this.
Sure.
4 to 10?
0 to 1. So the first change in tiers is at 1 experience. The next change is at 3 experience. The next change is at, sorry, I have somebody wedging themselves into this video. So I have, so the first tier, so it's 1 experience, 3 experience, don't encourage him, 10 experience, and so on. You can find on my website the rates. I have a rate sheet that has the tiers.
Okay, thank you. Hi there, sweetheart.
Well, I can't hear you, but they're saying hi to you.
Oh, I want to say hi back.
You can hear you. Say hi.
Hello.
Mark, it's Marshall again. I do have another question. Can you expand on the process itself for funding a deal, right?
Sure.
In terms of timeline, the paperwork that is required, the timeline that it takes to do that.
Sure. The process, I'll describe mine. Look, every lender is different. I'll describe my process, okay? With me, it's very simple. You come to me and you fill out a deal form. That's the information I need in order to provide a quote. As I mentioned, I come out of the engineering world, so that's how we would obtain parts, components, and get work done, right? So first we'd get a quote. So you come to me, you fill out the deal form, you get a quote. If you agree to the quote, you sign the letter of interest that I provided, and at which point I will need the initial documents to order the appraisal and title, because those are the longest lead items. So I would need the purchase agreement, a repair estimator, a loan application that would allow us to run background and credit checks, and title contact information so that we could order title work. We would order the appraisal. The appraisal is, we work through Appraisal Nation, which is it's an AMC, an appraisal management company. So they're a nationwide company that then hires a local appraiser in your market to come out and actually do the inspection. So while we're waiting for the appraisal and while we're waiting for the title work to be completed, that's the time when we would collect your company docs, right? So we would collect your articles of organization, your operating agreement, your EIN letter. We would also be looking at your bank statements or asset statements, right, to see that you have enough funds to close on the deal and the liquidity necessary. And photo ID and so then there's also the ACH form with a voided check and the homeowner's insurance policy, right, the insurance on the property. Once the appraisal report is in and title is in, that's when the entire file goes into underwriting, where everything is verified, including your experience. If you have any, right? If you're saying you have experience, then we ask for your experience portfolio, which is essentially a list of the properties you've done, right, in the last 3 years. Either you have rentals or fix and flips. So that entire loan package, once we have the appraisal and the title, goes to underwriting, gets reviewed, we verify all of the information, and assuming there's no issue, and typically there isn't, right? I mean, we have this conversation ongoing while the appraisal is being done, right? So if there's any issue with the paperwork or we still need anything else, we come back and let you know. So it goes into underwriting, gets reviewed, comes out of underwriting, and the loan gets approved, and then it gets scheduled and closed. The entire process is, the way I describe timeline is this: appraisal plus 5 business days, because the appraisal is the part that holds us. And appraisals can be 5 business days, appraisals can be 10 business days. If it's a busy season or if it's the week between Christmas and New Year's, it could be a month. So that's the part, that's the gate for us. So as long as soon as the appraisal is in, I'm able to put everything into underwriting. It's 3 days, up to 3 days to underwrite, although, you know, I had it done overnight the other day. And then it's about 2 days to schedule a closing with your title company. That's it. So roughly 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
But I'm going to ask you more question on that, Mark. So
course.
if everybody's done with the actual presentation, I'm gonna ask him my usual questions that we ask. Some of the questions we ask the lenders. So what is your typical rate range and your points range?
So,
And I understand it depends on experience, and I don't know if you run a credit check on the person or not, but
we do.
Okay.
We do run credit checks and background checks. Minimum credit score right now, I have capital partners that we can do as low as 600 on a credit score, although 650 is really preferable as the minimum. Felonies, preferably none, but if there are, it's a question of what they are. If it's financial felonies, then it's just a hard no, obviously. If it's a bar fight 3 years ago kind of thing, we're having a conversation. So, well, no, I mean, look, it matters. It matters. It's still poor judgment, but it's different. Now, in terms of rate range, right now we're at about 10 to 12 and a half. 10 on the lower end, 12 and a half on the higher end, with 2 to 3 points, depending again on different variables.
And the credit pool, is it a hard inquiry or soft inquiry?
So when we're actually doing the loan, it's a hard pull. To quote a project, I don't pull credit. So my initial quote is based on the information you provide to me. You tell me you're a 10, if a borrower tells me they're a 10 plus borrower with 800 credit, I will quote it as a 10 plus borrower with 800 credit. If, as part of the underwriting, we ask for the experience portfolio, and it turns out that they bought a house that they live in, and they fixed it up and changed the kitchen in it, and then they're renting out a room, and they were counting that as 3 experience. Obviously, it changes. Okay. Same thing if they're telling me that if a borrower tells me that it's 800 credit score and it turns out to be 700, or 700 is not bad, but it turns out to be 650, then it will also affect things. But the initial quote is based on information provided. I don't do a hard pull.
And just like everybody else, once everybody has to go through the formal application, you pull the credit, and then you have the guarantor in place, and then that's it. After that, it's just project by project. You don't have to go back to re-pulling the credit and resubmitting applications.
3 to 6 months for the credit pull.
So after 6 months,
situations in people's lives change. Right? Just because somebody had a fantastic credit score 6 months ago, and then while paying our loan, they started defaulting on a bunch of other ones, we still will need to know.
So after 6 months, you will pull the credit again.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Now, the inspection fees, are your inspection fees included in the original loan, or is that something that has to be paid? Because some lenders, when they give you the draw, they take the inspection fee out of the draw, and others will make you pay up front. Which way do you go?
It's 200. It's out of the draw. It runs, again, I have different capital partners. Typical, it's $200. At the outset, it would be $255. But none of this is going to be a surprise. Essentially, the quote I provide up front is what you're getting. You know exactly what it will be. We don't have a minimum number of draws. We don't force you to draw either. So I've had people ask me, well, why wouldn't I draw? I had a scenario where the renovation was $30,000 and the people opted to, they had the money, they paid for it out of pocket, and they never drew the funds. They simply sold the property and never pulled for that renovation. Okay.
But just so we know, because that was one surprise for us when we did our second project, they would give us, we would request, let's say 20 grand, and they'll remove the 200. So we're thinking we're gonna get 20,000, and we're like, Oh, no, there's 200 that was taken out.
Yep.
Okay. So is it possible though to pay that up front and then your draw become your draw? Can you include it as part of the
No.
closing?
No.
Okay.
Besides, I wouldn't want you to necessarily bring even more to closing. Just expect that every time you're drawing money, you're paying $200. So that same money that you could have brought up front is the money that you can just
Keep. Okay.
exactly and fill it in.
Okay. What are your extra fees? I mean, you know, junk fees. What are those?
$9.95 legal, and there's roughly $250 of miscellaneous stuff like background and credit check. Now, all of this is paid at closing. Okay, so there's no fees up front, none of that. But there's about $250 of miscellaneous stuff, such as, like I said, the wire fee to the closing, a tax service to make sure that the property taxes are being paid while the project's going on. So $9.95 legal and about $250 of minutia.
And the tax service is, what is that? Can you explain?
Yeah, making sure that you guys that the investor is paying the property taxes
During the entirety
during the
of
project.
the project.
Yep. So they're paid.
Tax payment. Okay. And then the initial appraisal fee, is that gonna, because the draw fee is 200, but the appraisal fee, is it gonna be in the 400s?
What do you mean in the 400?
The like, well, how much is it with the company that you use, the property appraisal?
So Appraisal Nation is the management company. So the appraisal fee is actually quoted by the appraiser, depending on whatever. It's not a fee that goes to us. It's not a fee that we collect. We're not part of the process. So here's, you know, I've had a lot of people talk about how my lender's appraiser. We don't appraise. In fact, so an appraisal is done by a completely independent third party. I don't know who the appraiser is until I get the report, just so you know, okay? I have no idea who they are. I have no influence over them whatsoever, okay? So the way it works is we order the appraisal. Appraisal Nation finds an appraiser. The appraiser quotes their price. The payment link goes to the borrower, okay, to the investor. Once they pay, the appraiser contacts them directly to gain access to the property. Okay, they do the inspection. Now, my recommendation to everybody is be there for the appraisal.
Yes.
Explain to them what you're doing. Make sure that they're clear on what you're doing. This is where your repair estimators are a very important thing, because the repair estimator that you're providing to me for the budget is the same one that I'm providing to the appraiser for them to determine the ARV, the actual repair value. And there's a huge difference between putting in new countertops, right? What kind of countertop? Is it granite? Is it quartz? Is it Formica, right? Just saying new countertop doesn't give them enough information to generate the ARV, but saying that it's a new quartz countertop, right, that you're doing and filling in that information gives them a better idea. So you want to be more detailed here. You want to be more detailed about what you're doing. And then obviously if you're adding square footage, again, you want to be there to point it out. You want them to know that you're adding an extra 400 square feet, an extra 200 square feet, whatever it is, because if the appraiser's providing a value based on square footage, every foot counts, right? Another 200 square feet, another 3, another 4. It counts and it's important. So you want to be there. And then we get the appraisal report and, you know, move on from there. So the fee is paid by the borrower and the link goes directly to them. And that's part of the third party costs. So I think it's very important for everybody to realize that there are certain costs that are charged by the lenders, and then there are third party costs that are going to be paid no matter who the lender is. Okay, so appraisal is something you're paying no matter what. Title work is something you're paying no matter what. It doesn't matter who the lender is. The part that's lender specific is the points. It's the lender legal fee. Some lenders have an application fee or a processing fee or whatever they can call it, right? So
Right.
some lenders can have a $600 to $800 fee, additionally. So you want to know what the fees from the lender are, and then you want to calculate third-party fees that you're going to be paying anyway, such as your own attorney.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
So my next question is for the draw inspections,
Mhm.
are you also using Appraisal Nation or who do you
No,
use?
it's a different company. There's different companies for it. I think the one we use predominantly is NVMS. And again, they're a nationwide company with local inspectors. So it's not somebody, right? They'll find somebody local to come out and inspect. And the person's there essentially to come out, take photos of what you've completed. And again, they have your repair estimate, right? They have your scope of work, or the repair estimator that you provided to me in order to tell me what your budget is, that we provided to the appraiser for them to know what you're doing. That's the exact same repair estimate that now the inspector is using to check off. And this is where my suggestion on this is, have it as detailed as possible, as broken up, so that it's easy for the inspector to just say complete or not complete. We reimburse on percentages, okay? But I'll give you an example. Let's say you have kitchen cabinets for $4,000. You have appliances for another $2,000, and you have flooring for another $2,000. Let's say cabinets are partially in, appliances are partially in, and the inspector comes. How much are they reimbursing? It's an unknown, right? Is it 50%? Is it 40%? Is it 60%? But on the other hand, if you say kitchen cabinets are $4,000 and all of the kitchen cabinets are installed, done, right? That's a line item, that's done. If your appliances are $2,000 and the appliances are installed, that's $2,000. There's no argument about it. Some things are a little easier to calculate, right? Let's say you're installing 10 new windows and only 5 are installed. Well, that's pretty easy to determine that it's 50%. But imagine you've got flooring going into 2 bedrooms and one bedroom is slightly bigger than the other, right? And the slightly bigger one is complete. Okay, well, is it 50% complete? Is it 40% complete? Is it 60% complete? It becomes a question. It's a lot simpler if you have 2 bedrooms of flooring and all of the flooring is done. Then there's no discussion, there's no argument. It's just done.
Right. We've had that issue as well where the inspector came and we told him, like the plumbing was done, and he's like, he didn't see that the plumbing was done, but for us it was done, but for him it wasn't done. So if there's an issue like that comes up, how do we reach out to you to try to get that situated?
You would reach out to our servicing department to discuss it with them. But again, when the inspector's coming, you're there to walk it through with them and tell them what you've completed. So what happened? I'm just curious, what happened in your scenario when he didn't see it as complete? What is it that you were doing that he didn't think was done?
We told him all the plumbing was done and all the wall was closed, were closed and everything, because we didn't have the fixtures on the vanities. He didn't estimated it to be complete. So it was very subjective. So we did tell him that it was complete, but when he did his report, he put something else.
80%?
No, I think he gave us 60%. So we're like, at least 80% we could understand. But 60% we're like, dude, the walls are closed.
Yeah.
The vanities are there. All we have to do is just add the faucet, like literally. And we had all the closing permits from WSSE. So it's like, that was really like, we were just, okay, we didn't expect that.
Which is precisely why I suggest having it done. If you would have had the fixtures on, see, that's what I'm saying. You're saying it's 80%, he's saying it's 60%. Imagine you would have had the fixtures on and it's just done.
Yeah, so there's no arguing. Okay, well, that makes sense. That's why we ask these questions now to kind of understand. So, okay, this is how you do yours, because we have other lenders. They send one person he knows the type of work we're doing. He comes in, is like, okay, yeah, I know they have it, so he moves on. But if it's somebody who's we never seen before, it might not be the same reaction. Okay, so that was another one we wanted to I definitely always ask. So NVMS inspectors. Okay, so I understand that. Now, that was my main questions. Does anybody else have questions for Mark as far as the funding part or the draws? Because that's one of the ones that's always
Yes.
always tricky.
Mark, another
Yes.
question. How do you handle the draws before they're issued? Are they accruing interest or no?
No. So there's two answers. Typically, no. Okay. But if the loan, so okay, as long as the initial amount advanced towards purchase is more than 50,000, then no. What I have is sometimes there's a scenario where the purchase price is low and the initial advance towards purchase is low. Since we don't force you to take draws, right? I can't force you to take the renovation draw. At that point, we charge interest on the full amount. Okay?
Got it.
But under normal circumstances, right? Let's say you're buying a property for 100,000, you're fixing it for 50. No, the interest does not accrue on the renovations, on the holdback. It's only on the drawn money.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Huge, very important in places like California or New York City, actually, where you have huge purchase prices and renovation amounts. That can start hurting right there.
Yes.
And by the way, I'm sorry, Robert, I didn't forget. By the way, that's actually a very good question, and that's a very important point, because I've come across investors who talk to me and then they say, wait a minute, you're not charging interest on undrawn funds? I say, no. And they say, oh, wow, I should be borrowing from you. I say, why? Because they get, let's say, 9%, 10% interest, right? Lower than perhaps mine would be for them. But because I don't charge on the undrawn funds, that actually can amount to a huge difference.
It does. I'm glad you pointed that out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. It makes a huge difference.
Yes, Robert.
So Mark, going back to Aisha's question on the construction draw from the money lender.
Mm-hmm.
So our last two projects, we had we used hard money and private funds, and so hard money construction draw, because of the permit situations, we're doing a full gut rehab. The permits are all sequencing based on the inspections, and the inspections are the draws are based on the inspections. So for instance, if we have plumbing, for instance, plumbing starts from the start of the project, and plumbing goes at the end until the project is all finished. So let's say you may have 5,000 or 10,000 for plumbing. You got a rough-in, then you got to finish plumbing, and then you get final inspection. So your draw schedule, you don't get, is based on that scenario. And so it's a systemic draw schedule. Same thing with framing, installation, and things like that. Because they all have to be inspected before the contractor goes to the next step.
Right.
So is that something that should come if we have a project that your guys are looking at from that perspective?
So the way we're looking at it is percent completed. Okay, that's essentially how we're looking at it, percent completed. So let's use framing as an example. If you have 1,000 square feet of framing and you've completed 500, well, you can calculate that it's 50% completed, and that's a 50% draw.
Right.
Right. I don't exactly know how you would separate plumbing or how you would portion it. I don't know. That's a great question. I just don't know.
Yeah, I just think from our experience with contractors that because it is put it this way, the architectural industry is systemic, and contractors understand it's very systemic. So you don't do Z before you do A.
Right.
The inspectors don't inspect Z before they inspect item A. So as you walk through the project, from foundation, framing, insulation, plumbing, roughing, final plumbing, and the schedules are set up that way. So everything is on, is on par, so that you don't, in other words, it helps you to prevent trying to, if the contractor misses something and it doesn't pass inspection, you're not paying him too much.
Right.
You're not overpaying. Yeah.
So the way you would do it is, so you're right, it is systemic, but again, you've completed things, which means it's completed, which means you can get reimbursed for it. So
Right.
if you go into it knowing that that's happening, just be aware of it and structure your budget accordingly. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
And I'll give you a story. So I had a project where essentially, so we don't do new construction. Okay. So we don't do tear down and, rebuild or new construction. So on a project, you need to have at least one wall remain standing in order for us to fund it.
Right.
Okay. So I had an investor who was going to leave one wall standing, but when they got to it, they actually needed to tear it down as well, because the building codes had changed from when the house had originally been built, and now they couldn't leave that wall as it stood. So we knew this up front. It's a very experienced borrower. It wasn't the first deal with them. So the arrangement we came to was, okay, we don't do new construction, so here's what we need from you. Before your first draw, have it back up to where it's walled in. Basically, what we don't see, we don't know, kind of thing, right?
Gotcha.
So, but as you can imagine, tearing down an entire structure and then rebuilding it at least to the portion of the outer perimeter, right, framed in, it was something like a $20,000 or $30,000 part that they had to complete. But that's what they needed to do. So they just worked around it, right? They knew that their budget needed to have that $30,000 to get the stuff done to that point before they can make that draw.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Mark. Thank you.
Of course.
So just, I have two, I'm sorry. I have two more questions to ask.
Sure.
Mine also is trying to sneak in the room, sorry. Two more questions to ask about draws. So just to clarify, unless the renovation is more than the actual property cost, it's whatever that's drawn that you charge the percentage on.
Not if the renovation is more, but rather if the initial advance towards purchase is less than $50,000. That's when we're doing a full interest.
Okay.
Now, what you just described, a heavy rehab, when the renovation is more than the purchase, that's a separate story.
So like 60,000 purchase, 120 reno.
Yeah. What about
So what do you charge? Do you charge the 180 upfront, the interest on the 180, or do you do just on the 60 plus each of the draw as they come in?
It depends on, so okay, with 60,000, it's so close, I don't want to do the math right now. Let's say you're buying for 100 and you're fixing for 120. We're just charging on whatever's drawn.
Okay, so every time it's drawn. Okay,
Yep.
fair enough. And I understand. Now, do you require even draws, or does the draw? Because okay, so
Based
I
on
understand
completion.
you. Huh?
Based on
Percent
completion.
completion.
Yep.
Okay, so we have to go, and you say you base it on the repair estimator.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you're the one, you provide a repair estimator to me.
Yes.
Okay, so that's it. According to your repair estimator, that's what our inspector inspects, right? So if you tell me, so think about it. If you tell me we're going to be doing new windows, we're going to do new flooring in the bedrooms, we're going to replace one bathroom, right? We're going to retile it. We're going to do a new vanity, new shower, new toilet, and we're redoing the kitchen. That's it. My inspector, and let's say HVAC. So my inspector shows up, right? And basically, whenever you request a draw, you've got enough stuff completed that you know that it's done. So let's say you request a draw, right? Because you've completed the windows and you've replaced the HVAC. Okay, so you request the draw, the inspector shows up, and you basically point out that windows are replaced, HVAC is replaced. That's it.
Okay.
He marks it off. That's the draw. Next time kitchen's done, flooring's done, bathroom's done, and that's how the draws go.
Okay, because I'm so used to having the repair estimator and the draw schedule. I always have two documents, but you just want just the repair estimator. And then we go with the repair estimator and we just highlight the items that are completed and we request the funds for those allocated items. Okay, well.
What happens if you decide that you want to draw and some portion is not, let's say if you did break it up into phases, right? But what happens if you decide that you want to draw and one of the pieces is not done?
Yeah. No, then then I have to adjust my draw schedule. That's what I've had to do.
Okay.
Just move stuff around left and right.
Right.
Okay.
With us, it's just stuff is done or not done.
Okay, perfect. So I think I'm done bugging you on draws.
No, listen, it's an important part of the process.
Absolutely. It's a critical part of the process because I mean, I could, for all of those of us that have done projects, if you get to a point where I need my money now, running after the inspector, please come do it, get us the funds so we can pay some of these cards down and start paying these items and move on. So, yep, absolutely. So I appreciate that. Does anybody else have any other questions? Otherwise, I have some other questions I wanted to ask him, but they're outside of the presentation. I always try to get the lenders to give us their feel on the market, especially with what's going on with COVID.
Hey, Aisha, this is Wasan.
Hi, Wasan.
How are you doing? Hey, Mark. Thank you. It's nice seeing you again, and thank you for enlightening us with all the information from the other side of the business. So I was actually going to ask what you're going to ask. I was waiting to, I was waiting you're going to ask that question, but I'm going to ask it. So what did you notice, because of this COVID, everybody's at home. I think lenders are becoming a little bit reserved on lending. So what is your intake? How did you see the market change? And what do you forecast in the future? 6 to 1 year is going to happen in the real estate, business and the real estate market, and related to lending also because of this COVID crisis. That's the question.
I don't know. This is unprecedented, and I don't know. I can tell you what has happened so far and what the trend has been. So when COVID started and when everything got shut down in March, hard money, or essentially 80% of it, disappeared.
Yep.
Okay. So think about it. 80% of the hard money stopped. That's a lot of money. And what's been happening over the last 3 months is little by little, it has been coming, well, not little by little, it has come back, but it hasn't come back to the same levels as pre-COVID. Lenders want more skin in the game from investors. Okay, so we're still providing capital, right? I'm providing anywhere between 60 to 80, to 70%, 75% of the total deal amount for an investor. So if before it was anywhere between 80 and 90%, we've pulled back to, let's say, 60 to 70%. Okay. What's happening is rates are higher because there's not as much lending going on. And also what's happening is a lot of lending companies are holding the notes. They're actually carrying the loan. So the way hard money works is a loan gets issued, and then that loan is sold to an investment fund. Okay, but those investment funds don't necessarily want to buy as much right now, or they're not available to buy. So lending companies end up actually carrying the loan. Because they're carrying the loan, their money is no longer turning over as frequently, right? They're not picking up the points as much. So now they actually have to put that amount into the loan, right? They now have to increase the interest rate and the points to cover what they're not earning. So that's why the costs are higher right now. And that's what's on the market, that it's slower LTVs, right? So if before we were doing 80 to 90% of purchase, right now it's 70 to 80% of purchase. If before we were pushing to 75% of ARV, right now it's 70% of ARV. Okay, so the LTVs have decreased, but it has been improving. And I'm not exaggerating when I say things change on an almost daily basis.
They do.
Okay, so they're improving. But for example, I can tell you what disappeared and I still don't have it. And, you know, it's tough. So for example, we're now able to provide 1 to 4 unit long-term financing, 30-year financing for 1 to 4 unit properties. What disappeared is 5 and up, and they're still not back. It's been 3 months, they're still not back. So that's a change that is on the market. What's coming in the next 6 months? Probably a lot of foreclosure, because any way you slice it and dice it, any way you look at it, people have taken an economic hit. Okay, no matter how you look at it, people have lost income. Everybody has lost income. Okay, and that income is necessary to buy properties. That income is necessary to pay the mortgages on existing properties. So I think what's coming is most likely a wave of foreclosures, a wave of people who cannot stay in the houses that they have, and they're either going to downsize or they're going to hopefully just downsize, not lose them outright. But I think that's what's coming.
So if I can add to that as well, coming from the real estate, the residential real estate side, because I am also licensed. So
Florida, how is it down there? It's nice. Oh, okay. You like it?
Sorry. So what I was going to say is on that section, that side, this is what we're seeing. I've picked up more buyers because people, I guess, because they were inside, are now finding themselves having to finding
themselves the cities.
Well, so neighbors, so they're working from home, they need to get out basically. So people that were kind of procrastinating to purchase now are purchasing. So that was the first thing. The second thing was the inventory was always 3 months, meaning if everything was sold, it would take 3 months to replenish for our area, and it's not improving. Where we have not seen, actually our market is even tighter. So anybody that has nice houses that they're ready to put on the market, it's a good thing. The problem is on the investor side, trying to pick up, it's very hard to find good deals as well. But we know that in a few months, as more people are continuing to default, the stimulus has been helping, but it's not replacing income. So people that were not able to replace their income, and maybe it was a two paycheck family, now you only have 1 paycheck. These people are going to try to save their house. If they can, they're going to move out. And we're starting to see people that have 90 days behind on paying their mortgages. So all that, and people have been asking me, I have buyers calling me, people are like, oh, I want to buy foreclosures. Like, this is not the time. You have to wait. It's going to be at the end of the year or further down the end of the year that we're going to start to see them. But on the other hand, Mark, there's buyers out there. There's a lot more buyers. There's people looking for deals. So, this is there's going to be more renters. So if you can start to pick up your portfolio for rentals, this is the time to do it. If you're going to be finding properties to renovate and resell later, it's the time to do it. The market is still very active. And again, we're in a bubble because we have the government, we have a lot of international groups, IMF, the IMF and World Bank. And we also have a lot of headquarters of major Fortune 500 companies because everybody's lobbying to the government. So we always have these little bubbles where things are a little bit different for us compared to the rest of the US. So I just wanted to kind of point
Mhm.
that out. The next question that we always ask is, and you kind of answered, we were going to ask what you're funding. So you did say that
Yep.
you are doing the fix and flip, you're doing the residential 1 to
Mhm.
4, but you don't have that 5 and up commercial.
Yeah.
How many people do you, how many funds do you work with? Because I mean, you're a broker, right? And you have your own funds, or are you just, right? So how many other people do you work with when you're funding?
Not many.
Okay.
That's I always look. So what I spend my days doing is looking for the best options and figuring out what, how to fund somebody. But I don't work with a lot. Actually, I have, you're absolutely right. I have my own, we have our own MIRS group capital. We have a capital fund that we've raised, and we have a handful of equity of capital partners that we work with.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. The what changes have you made to your criterias for when people are coming in to ask for loans because of COVID? And have you? And I guess I mean I don't know if you use the term overlays,
Mm-hmm.
because I know the banks have changed that. So like when lenders for residential loans, like when I'm bringing a buyer, they have what they call the overlay. So they've changed those criterias.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done, and we've seen even on the residential side, they're starting to charge points to buyers,
Right.
providing them with those nice rates because of COVID, because they want to make sure they get some money up front in case something happened in the future. Have you, like, what changes have you made now, and are you starting to relax some of these changes for the qualifications?
So the changes are the increased credit score,
Okay.
the changes that like I said, the LTVs got pulled back. One of the changes that I personally was hit with is, so one of the things I would do is I would provide second position loans. I had it arranged where behind my first position, I was able to provide a second position loan for the gap in the purchase. So as long as the numbers on the deal made sense, it was a healthy deal, I was able to provide second position. That's something that's changed. They don't allow it, which is one of the reasons why I've had to pivot and figure out the equity partnership, so that I could continue funding or basically provide more capital for healthy deals that made sense. So that's a change that I've made. But essentially, it's become much more cash intensive for the investor, which is why I thought this presentation was more important to talk about how to finance a deal than the specific rates. Most lenders have pulled back on LTVs. Most lenders have increased their rates. So I think it's important for people to have an idea of how to finance a project.
Okay, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see with things starting to open up? I know they started to open up, we're phase 2 in Maryland. You guys, I'm not sure which phase you guys are in yet.
I think we're in 2 now as well.
Okay. And, the cases have spiked again, of course, because most, people mingle and things. Do you see yourself going back to your previous funding criteria in maybe the next 6 months, or do you really don't see? I know it's a day-to-day thing right now.
I don't think we're going to be back to normal until we see what happens with real estate in general, and with basically the state of the economy overall.
So on my side, we're thinking that we're not going to see things go back to 100% normal until there's some type of vaccine, because you have to kind of get people's fears down. If there's a vaccine, even if it doesn't work for 100% of the people, but it works for the majority, it's good enough, then, then things can kind of get back to somewhat of a normalcy, I guess. But again, now they're talking about maybe January before they have anything put together. So I again, so this is, this is what we're seeing on our end, the residential side.
I agree, but also I think it's just an economics question also. We don't know what's going to happen, right? The government just printed up a bunch, I'm not going to say printed. The government just provided a bunch of support for people. okay, that has an economic toll on the country.
Yes.
On top of it, people have lost jobs, okay? Businesses are not coming back. There's plenty of businesses that are not coming back. We still haven't felt the full economic impact of that. We also haven't had the full economic impact of, you know, foreclosures and what's coming there. So I think that until we have a clearer picture of what happens there, I don't think rates will come back to where they used to be, or LTVs will come back to where they used to be until that's known. The other problem that we've just experienced, okay, and I'm not going to debate, this isn't a political statement of government or whatever, but we've just experienced government telling landlords what they can and can't do. And I am one. And there's an impact there as well. And we still don't know what that impact is either. And speaking of buying up rentals, oh, I agree, buy rentals, just calculate in vacancy. Calculate in the fact that the tenants may not pay for a while, and you still have to pay your property taxes and expenses on the property. Right? I've always run a very healthy reserve because I never wanted to dip into my pocket, right? So every month out of the rents that we collect, I've always set aside a healthy percentage. And day one, when I buy a property, I set aside 2 months of all expenses right at purchase, okay? And right now, this is what's helping me, but I'm not collecting 100% rent.
Right. And the other thing too that we have to look at is there's some people also have a decrease of income. Like, you know, restaurant now is at 50% capacity where they're not making as much money. That's also their rotating staff. So some staff that were paid hourly are not, instead of working a full month, they might work 2 weeks out of the full month. So definitely all of that. There was a question about the guarantor on the loans. So when you're doing the guarantee on the loan, so so you run the credit of let's say it's a company with 2 people. So you're going to run the credit for both, or just one of them, the one with the better credit score?
The one that's everybody that's over 20%.
Okay, well, that's everybody.
No, not necessarily. What I mean is, if you have a company, husband and wife, right? My wife doesn't really care if she's 50% or if she's 19% of the company. It's irrelevant to her, right? So if it prevents a ding on her credit by switching the operating agreement to have me at 81%, she doesn't mind. That's all it is, and I'll be the guarantor. And then the next deal we can swap.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
But you're gonna always, so you have no program that does not require a guarantor. All the programs have to have a guarantor.
Yes.
Okay. And the guarantor, what is the expectations, I guess? So somebody is the guarantor. So if, God forbid, they default on the loan, you have to take them to foreclosure. Do you go after their personal properties, or how?
Hopefully not. Hopefully it doesn't come to it. But yes, we do have the ability to go after somebody personally. But, right, that's what a personal guarantee is, right? So, for example, my rental properties that I own, they're inside of LLCs, but I personally guaranteed the payment of the loan. So if the LLC, for whatever reason, defaults on making that payment, the bank will come to me and say, hello, Mark Abramovich, you owe us this payment. You have personally guaranteed it. However, then I work it out with them. So
if I can, I mean, if anybody has any questions, but I have another question that's different, talking about your rentals. I always have questions. Sorry.
That's fine. No. That's what first of all, that's what we're here for.
Okay.
The answer, I'll give you a little bit more information on the, not so much personal guarantee as much as I mentioned that I provide a deal summary. So I always think it's very important for people to know what their project is going to require, start to finish. Okay. Whether you have that money right now or not, I think you still need to know it. So my deal summary actually provides the full amount of money necessary. And I think an investor should know where they're going to come up with it.
Okay.
And if the number is scary, it's scary, but it doesn't change the fact that if you're going to hold a property that you bought for $400,000, right, your monthly interest is going to be even at, let's just say 12% annual so that it's easy. That's a $4,000 a month interest payment.
Yep.
If you hold that property for, let's just say 6 months, that's $24,000 just in interest payments.
Yep.
We're not even discussing the down payment, right? So let's say the down payment that you had to put down on top of it was another $60,000. Well, right there, we're talking about $84,000 that you have to bring to do a deal. A scary number to some, but you need to know this. So I provide a deal summary that shows people exactly, well, as best I can, to calculate exactly what they're going to need for the full project to help you plan and calculate.
Okay, that makes sense. Now you mentioned rentals. So I guess my question is, you when you do your rentals, and this is kind of like taking it out just because you have rentals. Do you have a big portfolio, smaller portfolio?
I have 3 multifamily buildings. Building sounds loud, but it's a total of 14 units.
Okay.
And that's my personal holdings. And then I also have 2 single units. They're half a duplex, basically, down in North Carolina. So I own a total of 16 doors. Plus,
and is it different places, or do you have some by you and the New York area and some in North Carolina?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
2 doors in North Carolina and 14 doors in Connecticut.
Perfect. So one thing that when we did all the training, they were saying they do the conventional loan, personal, and then they put the property under real estate trust and the LLC owns it. Were you able to do that? I
didn't do it that way. I did it through I simply owned them in an LLC outright. And the bank that I financed it with is a local bank in Connecticut.
Okay.
And they did not have a problem financing an LLC. They increased the interest rate, but it also didn't matter because my properties are, one is a 6 unit, one is a 5 unit, and one is a 3. We'll leave the 3 aside. We're just going to talk about the 6 and the 5. It's not a residential mortgage anymore.
It's commercial.
Right? So it's a commercial mortgage, which means I had to find other financing. So I went to a local bank and they financed it just fine for me, right in an LLC. And that's it. I didn't have to do the trusting. I just simply bought it right into an LLC.
Right. But then because you had that relationship, you were able to add the other ones in there too?
No, each building. So here's another thing. I didn't want buildings cross talking. I want each one separate, right? So to have an LLC costs money. Okay, in general, there's an annual filing, there's annual tax filings, right? So there's an overhead, which is why if you're doing single family houses, you would put 4 to 5 houses into a single LLC. Okay. You don't want too much in there because then if there's liability, then they can try, people will try to go after all of the assets inside that LLC. With a 6-family building, it's big enough to carry a single, the cost of an LLC.
Right.
Okay. So I don't want to put another building in there and have the liability talking between them.
Right. Okay. So that was my next one, where you separate, because I do understand as a property manager, tenants, you don't have the right tenants and you give them any excuse.
Don't know anything about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And in our area, lead paint there's professional lawyers that encourage people to sue you for lead paint.
Right.
So in Baltimore. So yeah. So I think that's all the question I wanted to ask you today. I mean, we could be here all night. But I mean, I definitely appreciate your time. Does anybody else have any questions they wanted to ask Mark before I release him?
Don't be shy. I mean, feel free if there's anything else.
Yes, Mark, one last question. So for the construction draw, how much time do you need? Let's say I called you today and say, Mark, Friday is coming up. I need inspection.
4 days.
Do you have a time frame you need from inspection to the check, the money's in the account?
Yes. So that's, it's 2 days for the inspector to come out and it's 2 days for the funds to be wired. And I can tell you, so there's different ways of, well, okay, we say it's 2 days for the inspector to come. I've had stories from investors where they've told me it's been a day, that the inspector comes out sooner, but that's an individual inspector. The typical timeline is 2 days for the inspector to come, 2 days to have the money. Now, how you're reimbursing your workers and what happens there is up to what you can negotiate. So I've had conversations with different investors, and there's different ways. Some tell their workers, basically tell the contractor that we're not paying you anything until our hard money lender sends their inspector and they sign off, which, by the way, makes me the bad guy in the room, but it keeps the contractor honest. I don't mind being the bad guy, I don't care. Okay, so essentially you tell them, hey, until my hard money, until my lender's inspector comes and inspects, I'm not paying you anything, right? Because if the inspector shows up in the example that Aisa gave, right, with 80%, 60%, well, guess what? Now you can basically pawn it off on my inspector and say, hey, listen, they're just telling me that they're only funding me, 60%. I can't reimburse you 80. You're not done. That's it. Don't have it. Okay, so you use my inspector as the bad guy. So that's one way. And the turnaround is 4 days. The other side of this is, okay, you can't negotiate it for whatever reason. Your contractor says, I'm not doing it, no way, no how. Okay, you go the other way. You say, fine. And when your contractor tells you, I'm done with this and that, you take the repair estimator that you've provided to me, and you do what my inspector is going to do. You go through and check off what's done and not done. Right? And now you're floating that amount for the construction. So for the
4 days, working Monday through Friday, no weekends, right?
No weekends.
Right, okay, all right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Of course.
So what I found that was helpful, Rupert, was usually Wilson, he tells me the week before he starts bugging me. Tell them to come next week. I need them next week. I need you to call now so they can be here next week. So that's usually how we had to learn that too, to try to make it working a little bit better.
And here's the other suggestion of it, that you call the inspector. Now this is, again, you have to be careful there, right? You can call the inspector a day earlier. So to shave off one of the days, let's say if the work is going to be done in 2 days, right? You call, or how is it? Basically, you call the inspector not when it's done and then wait for 2 days, but you call them before it's done.
Yep,
right.
That's what we do.
Now, of course, they show up a little bit sooner. Oops. You know?
Because I usually tell him, okay, he's coming next week. He's like, it'll be done. Like I'll give him the weekend, and so I'm calling so they can come like Monday or Tuesday, so we're done by the weekend. Yeah, that's one of the tricks of the trade. Does anybody else have any other question? Otherwise, I would like to close the meeting. We usually try to keep it an hour and a half so that we don't keep it too long. But, we'll be more than happy if you guys want another session with Mark. He's always very gracious and he's always available. And I'll make sure to send again his information. He's very good at replying and answering. So, if anybody wants to get connected with him directly, I will share this information as well.
Thank you everyone for attending.
So thank you everybody for attending. Any other question, Wilson? Sorry, go ahead.
No. Just want to thank Mark for the knowledge and explanation, and I look forward to working with you.
Likewise. Thank you.
So thank you everybody for joining in. Mark, I'll be in touch with you. I told you already I have this multi-unit we're looking at. I definitely want to discuss that with you. And then thank you for all the wonderful questions. You guys have been great. This was really good. So thank you everybody. I will share the recording later on, and I'll look forward to see you guys in 2 weeks, and we'll try to have an exciting subject again.
See you all in 2 weeks. Take care.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.